Hi, this is Julie with Beadaholique, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a multi-strand bracelet using strand reducers. So if you're not familiar with what a strand reducer is, this is what it looks like. So usually they'll have multiple loops, anywhere from 2 to 4, 5, 6, whatever number on one side, and that's what you're going to connect your beads to. And then on the other side, you'll have a single loop usually, and that's what you could connect your clasp or a chain to. A lot of different ways you can use strand reducers, and in this particular application, I'm going to make a multi-strand bracelet. So I'm going to use these pretty check glass donut beads in a 4mm size, and I'm going to be using a strand reducer, the pair of them, some beading wire, some chain, a little lobster clasp, some jump rings, crimp beads, and crimp bead covers. So that will be my supplies. And then in terms of my tools, I've got some bead stoppers, a couple pairs of chain nose pliers, a crimping plier, and a cutter. So let me clear some of this out of the way and we can begin our project. So I want to show you real quick, when you're picking beads to use with a strand reducer, you want to look at how they're going to line up. And that's in relation to the space between the loops on the strand reducer. Okay, so this is going to be my beads. And you can see just by eyeballing it here, they're all going to fit really nicely. Now, if I had beads that were quite a bit larger, they would push out on the sides, which might not fit too well with this particular strand reducer. So keep that in mind when you are planning your project. So to start, I've got 4 lengths of beading wire, and I'm using this beading wire right here. It's Beadalon, and it's a 19-strand, 0.015 inch width. So 12 inches each for my lengths. I've pre-cut them because I want to have 6 inches of beads. So my concept here is going to be to have 6 inches of beads of each type on the inside of the strand reducers. Then I'm going to do a little clasp on one side, and then I'm going to do a little piece of cut chain. I'll cut this shorter on the other side so it's an adjustable bracelet. So let me cut a bead strand here, just so you can see. So we're going to end up cutting those off. And this is going to be the first one we're going to put on. And before we can put it on, we need to go ahead and attach our beading wire to one of our strand reducers. So to do that, put a crimp bead onto the end of it and feed it through one of the loops. Take the tail, wrap it back around and going through the crimp bead, and then pull that crimp bead down towards the loop. So you just have a little loop, and you want it to still move, so you don't want it too tight. Now we're going to crimp it. So if you're not familiar with how to crimp a crimp bead, I'll show you right now. This is a pair of crimping pliers, and if you look at the nose, you'll see there's 2 notches. One is like a kidney shape or a crescent moon, and one is more oval. So we're going to use the one that's closest to the handle, the kidney-shaped one, first to go ahead and create an indent in our crimp bead. So it's going to squish it. And then we're going to use this oval-shaped one to fold over the crimp, and that's going to secure the beading wire. So here we go. So I'm just holding it in that back notch and squeezing. And so this is what we've got to begin with. And then I'm going to fold it over. So I'm going to put it upright in that oval notch and fold. And then in this case, what I want to do, because I've already pre-planned my project, I'm going to go ahead to make life a little easier and put my crimp cover over it to begin with. This is my crimp bead cover. You see it's got an open side to it, it's like an open bead. I'm just going to put it over my crimp bead and squeeze. So now that's hidden. So it looks like we have just a really nice, pretty decorative bead on the end. And here's a little trick if you are making a multi-strand bracelet. Go ahead and do all your strands of beading wire first. That will give you a nice foundation to start with. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on all 4 of these loops. All right, my last crimp cover, and then I'll show you what we've got. All right, here we go. So we've got all 4 strands on there. You notice I have not trimmed the tails yet because I want to feed the tail through at least one of the beads just for a little added security on each strand. And another reason I like to do it this way is because it's a lot easier to get in here on a strand reducer with the crimping pliers when there's not a bunch of beads here already. So it's another little shortcut, little trick that makes the life a little bit easier. So I'm ready to string on my beads. So I'm just going to go to the end of my beading wire on one of the strands, and I want to have 6 inches of beads. So I'm just going to string them on. And like I mentioned, I want one of the beads at least to go through the tail, and I'm going to trim the tail at the very end too. So that you'll see the next one will just go right next to it, but the tail will stick out. So 6 inches of beads. All right, once I think I've got all the beads I need, I'm going to line them up against a ruler. And I am happy with that, so that looks good. I'm going to take one of my bead stoppers. Now, a bead stopper is great because all you do is you squeeze these little loops and it spreads out like an accordion, and then you just go ahead and secure that to the ends of your beading wire. So it just goes right through one of those little loops and it holds your beads in place. So now I can move this around and my beads are not going to go anywhere. So now I'm going to do the identical process with my other 3 strands of beads. So let's quickly recap where we are at this point. We've got all 4 strands of beads strung. We've got bead stoppers on their ends. And then this side is actually done for us with the exception of trimming the tails. So we've got all the crimp beads crimped, all the crimp covers on, and all of the tails fed through one bead. So now we're ready to do the other side. To do that, go ahead and take one of your bead stoppers off and place a crimp bead onto your strand. So it just slides right down next to the beads that are already there. Now pay attention to where your strand is secured on the original strand reducer, because you're going to want to also secure it to the same hole on the matched pair on the other one. So feed it through, in this case, an end loop, and then loop back down through that crimp bead and one more bead, just like so, and pull. Now you want to do, at this point, what you want to do is you want to make sure you have no big gaps of wire, and to achieve that, just pull your tail. And it's going to cinch it right up. So you don't want it too tight, but you also don't want those gaps. So this is about right. You can see a little bit of wiggle room here. It's still flexible. It'll still move on your wrist, but we're not seeing big gaps of wire either. So holding your tail in place with one hand and your strand reducer with the other, we're going to crimp this crimp bead. Same way as before. So we have that nice crescent shape, and then we're going to stick it upright in the oval notch so that it folds over on itself. There's a little hard angle right there. There we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a crimp bead cover, put it over it, and make sure it's sitting in there and squeeze. There we go. So that strand is complete. So at this time, if you want, you could go ahead and trim your tail. So you're just going to trim it really right close where it exits the bead. And we're going to do that on the other side as well. And if you do have a little bit that sticks up, it can always go right into the next bead. So one strand is complete. So you're going to do the same exact process on your other 3 strands. Again, make sure you look at the orientation here. This is needing to sit in there. There we go. All right. So make sure you look at the orientation of your bead strands on the first strand reducer so they do line up on the other strand reducer so you don't have a crisscross thing happening unless that is your intention. All right, we're ready for our very last crimp cover. So we've got all the other ones secure. So we're just gonna pop this guy on. There he is. And trim our last two tails. All right, so we have all of our beads on our bracelet. So that's what that looks like. And now we need to actually be able to put the bracelet on us. So what I'm going to use is a little bit of chain, a couple jump rings, and a lobster clasp. And I chose this chain so that the lobster clasp can attach to it at any link. So that is the second half of our clasp, actually, is going to be the chain. So let's just first start by putting on the lobster. So we're going to open a jump ring, slide it onto the loop on the strand reducer, and the little loop on the base of the lobster, and then close the jump ring. All right, half done. So you can either try this on your wrist at this point if you wanted to. So you can look at it here and then see where it goes. Now I have a particularly small wrist, so I would not use much chain at all. But you can use as much as you like, and if you're selling these, it's always nice to maybe add 2 to 3 inches so it would appeal to a lot of different people, because a lot of people have different sized wrists, of course, than what you do. So that's something to always keep in mind if you are selling jewelry, is make it for your customer, not necessarily for you. All right, another jump ring open, and the end chain link, and close it. And here is our finished bracelet. You can see we've got the 4 strands all going to the strand reducer, and then that single loop is what allowed us to attach our chain and our clasp. So you have a complete multi-strand bracelet using strand reducers. And you can find all the supplies you saw in this video, as well as many others, at Beadaholique.com.